Hello and welcome to the Wayfarer podcast, episode 4. Together we have today, it's me, Jared.
Jonathan.
Katya.
Zach.
Riley.
Jonathan, you're back.
I'm back.
Come on.
Good to be back.
My fear of you
We
never
missed
coming
you so
back.
much.
Yeah, it
It's
did
not
not come
true.
true.
We doubted, we were afraid, all of it. Yep. Yeah.
You guys
so
were
good
throwing
to-
shade for my unicycle behavior. It's been a common thing that I've found people tell me, so I'm starting to think they might be right.
About the unicycle?
Mhm.
Are you gonna get rid of your unicycle?
No.
Oh, good. It's characteristic
be
at this
crazy.
point.
Oh, man.
That would be crazy.
Well, we're glad to have you back. And especially when so much is going on right now with the, I did that for you.
Thank you.
I wanted to slip it in. With the holidays going on, it's Katya's birthday.
Woo, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
guys.
Cheers. Happy birthday.
Cheers.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I forgot
Can't
to get a
believe
drink.
it, guys.
Happy birthday.
Cheers.
Yep.
My birthday.
It's your birthday.
Wow, 23.
Mhm.
And to think, 2 weeks ago you were 23.
Crazy.
I
Things have
I
never
have this
changed.
thing when it's like I'm inching closer to my birthday, I like already adopt the year that I'm gonna be. So like a couple episodes ago, I was like, I'm 23. I'm 22, 23 now. So
Nice.
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Happy
Wow.
birthday.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Thanksgiving.
Yeah, a lot to be
Thanksgiving.
thankful for. Jonathan's back, your birthday. What's everybody's Thanksgiving kind of vibes?
Mm.
Do you remember we talked about this last season too?
Did we?
Yeah.
We did. Isn't that fun that we've
That's
got some
fun.
nostalgia to look back on?
Wow.
We are staying put. We're staying home.
Yeah.
We just did this huge trip for the Symphony Project. And so
Yes.
good on you to get back on a plane. I'm not ready. We were like, you know
Yeah,
what?
me
We
too.
are staying home, and we just got the new puppy. Baxter is part of the fam.
Baxter.
So laying low.
Insert Baxter here.
I know. We need like a little. He's adorable. Yeah.
Smushed him.
Poor Baxter. Yeah.
Put him right here. Put him
Yeah.
right here.
Maybe we'll get him in
Oh
here.
my God.
So we're staying.
Not around Katya.
Are you traveling?
No, I'm staying in Tampa.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, going back to North Carolina with the fam.
You mean South Carolina?
South
No,
Carolina.
I do not mean South
No,
Carolina.
my bad.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
My whole family abandoned me, so I'm going to my girlfriend's house. Should be
Okay.
nice.
Ooh. Hey,
That's
nicely
so
done.
fun.
That
Your-
was subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, your family did just kind of. I forgot about that when you
Yeah.
said they were gone. They
Siblings
left on a
too.
holiday.
They really just left me all alone.
That's a new stage of life.
Mm.
Mm.
Going to the
Just
in-laws.
like home alone.
That'll be fun.
It will
Riley,
be.
are you traveling or staying close?
No, staying. I mean, we have every year for my entire life we've always go to my aunt's house and have Thanksgiving. Around like 3 or 4 o'clock, and we all make something to eat. This year I'm making sweet potato casserole. So
Marshmallows?
oh yeah,
Attaboy.
extra marshmallows. But then
Good man,
after
good man.
after we eat, and once it gets dark and if it's cold outside, we'll make a fire. But then I always set up a projector and we watch Christmas movies for like
Mm.
3 or 4 hours. It's
Elf.
great.
Amazing.
You're the best.
Do you have
That's so sweet.
go-to Christmas movies? You have mix it up every year.
We usually switch it up every year. Like last year, I think we did the Grinch.
Which
and
Grinch?
The original with Jim Carrey.
Dude,
Or not the.
we'll really get into Christmas movies next episode,
Yes,
but the
let's
new
do that.
Grinch is amazing.
The animated one
Amazing.
with Tyler the Creator.
Amazing.
Wait, Tyler the Creator's in the new.
He
Yeah.
does the
There's a new
soundtrack.
He did the soundtrack. It was
Oh,
amazing.
That's funny.
So
I did
good.
not know that.
It was so good.
I
Zach,
can't believe we're already in that time of year, which I'm 100% ready for. I think everybody is. We just talked about this, that it feels, especially for anybody in the Southeast, like we're ready for just like
Yeah.
full throttle, let's go holidays. And the hurricanes were a lot and the election was a lot. Like everybody
Mhm.
went through a lot of emotional
Yeah.
stuff and everybody's just like ready for the holidays, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm always like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's been a ton in Florida. I mean, like the 2 hurricanes, then everything going on. I mean, it's like
It's crazy.
I finally feel like I'm like getting back into a rhythm, especially with like going to Brno, and then it's like
Yeah.
holidays are here. It's like time to
Crazy.
go. Keep
Mm.
We
going.
were supposed to have another hurricane like yesterday. Did you
It
guys see
fizzled
that?
out, yeah.
Sprinkled.
But it
I'm so
fizzled out.
thankful that one went away. We were not ready.
No.
People were
Yeah.
not pleased that
Yeah.
that was going to happen.
When they thought it was going to come through, I already texted my evacuation plan. I go, I'm going to come up to Wesley Chapel again, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out Kevin.
Shout out
Thanks,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Keeping him safe. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, we already
appreciate
appreciate
you.
that.
Yeah, the Geyers. We
Yeah.
love them. Well, season 2, we're talking about the challenges of the wayfaring journey. And I mean, I think what we've tried to establish is that in an ideal world, we would never be dealing with any of the hardships of the journey, but they're really a part of it. And so we're not trying to erase them, pretend like they don't exist, that you're not going to experience them, but really talk about how to get through them, without fear. And then today we're talking about temptation.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
That was good.
Excellent. We didn't even plan that. That
We
was
didn't even
horrible.
plan that. That was pretty good. Not gonna lie.
So, let's start about, Katya.
Oh.
When you hear the word temptation, what comes to your imagination?
Oh. It's so interesting because every other word we've kind of been diving into in this season, it's like they always bring such a negative vibe. Like temptation doesn't sound like a good thing. Like in my past, whether it be like in college or just like in high school, it's right now I feel like temptation for me is like if I'm scrolling on Instagram and like a pop-up ad of like a really cute sweatshirt comes up and then I screenshot it and I go back to it and I'm like, should I get this $80 sweatshirt? And it just never I don't know. Temptation is something that is sitting in front of me that I know I shouldn't necessarily get or do, but I want it anyway because I'm like, this will elevate my experience somehow, some way. So I feel like that's what comes to mind when we say temptation.
$80 sweatshirts.
Have you never seen those?
I've seen them. They don't tempt me too bad, but
Yeah,
the
the price
dopamine
tag makes
hit
me.
of buying stuff. It's like you get that little feeling of comes in the box, and it's like,
Yes.
oh, and then you got to do it again.
y'all get retail
Really?
therapy.
think-
It doesn't get it.
Yeah, I don't
doesn't
get it either.
I want it to.
I have a hard time even
Must be
spending
nice.
money on things like buying items that I'll use. I'm
But
just
when
like,
they come in, like Jonathan's saying, you open it and you're just like, wow, that looks really nice.
Mhm.
That's so interesting though, because I know the feeling that you're describing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, that's one for me, but it might not be for somebody else. I think that's the
This is
interesting
true.
thing about temptation. We'll get into it, but like, what is it that draws or
Yeah.
allures? I like that you said elevates the experience. I think we'll come back to that too, that might be the thing, right? That we talked about the malaise and that kind of just life feels muted. And then something comes along and says, I'll unmute that,
Mm.
right? That's a powerful thing.
That
I don't-
is
that was
true.
good. Well
Thank
said.
you.
mute button.
What's that?
The mute button. It's
Oh.
powerful.
Powerful.
Is it?
That's
Yeah.
a good point, though.
What comes to your mind?
Did
I
you hit
didn't
the
even hit
mute
it.
button?
I didn't even hit it.
That was well done.
Yeah, I think naturally, probably like most Christian people think of a lot of like negative things, like things that like draw you into sinfulness and Five Guys, So it's like
Always.
the kind of the mix of those two things. I feel, like I agree. I feel like I have a very negative negative definition of temptation.
Yeah. I think it's negative. I think I was trying to think about it when you were saying it. And like, if I had to say what's a persistent temptation at this stage of life that I've faced or that is there and just kind of presently. And I think a lot of times one that comes back is the temptation to give up, which isn't necessarily like a particular thing, but it's like, just give up. It would be easier,
Yeah.
right? It would be easier not to.
Yeah,
And
like
now-
when things get hard, you're just
Yeah.
like, I'm ready to give up.
I think I'm
like,
tap out. And what's the real harm, right? And I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, they're like, simplify your life. And then it's
Yeah.
like, just give up. It
give up.
comes in a nice box,
That's
if
right.
you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
Jonathan?
Usually when I hear temptation, the first story that comes to mind is the story of Christ and when he was driven into the desert and tempted. And I think it's interesting to know that the God, the creator, knows what it's like to be the creature who's tempted. And I also think it's interesting the two that got picked, like food, especially after fasting for 40 days. Can you imagine the draw of just taking a bite of bread? Like I
Yeah.
fasted for a day and I'll look at something and it's like you want nothing more than just to eat it. 40 days, I cannot imagine. And then the other one I guess would be more power because he was God and he was saying like you should, make it known to them. But he didn't. He chose not to. And that the temptation of pride I think is a big one for me that I'm constantly facing.
Mm.
And if the God of the universe can say no to that, then surely I should.
Yeah.
It's good.
Steep.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. the temptation to want to put something else like on the idle seat and like become like, I can oftentimes think like, if I get to this thing, if I do this, or if I become this, then all of a sudden like that temptation of becoming and like having this new identity, I think is like so palpable to, if I had that, I would be this. And it's like just not even true.
Isn't that funny? This that you bringing that up and saying that you could feel that, like, I'll give you this, and you can just kind of take the easy route, the bypass, and I'll give you that thing that'll set you up, right? If somebody came to you and said, like, it's a bit shady, but if you take this road, you can immediately go to Pasco, right, and collect your 200 for people who play Monopoly, and you're like, well, okay, yeah, why wouldn't I do that? Powerful.
This is good. I was actually talking to a friend the other day about like fruits, and this is going to make sense in a second, because we're talking about how like in the beginning of the Bible it talks about like Eve biting from the apple, and it led to like literally the entire like human experience.
Thanks, Eve.
So
Shout
but
out.
then we're talking about like the fruits of the spirit, and how when we're encountering things, it's like you take a bite of something and it's either going to give you a sweet taste or a bitter taste. And it's like based off of that, you decide how you're going to move forward. So it's like with temptation, you'll have that first like nip of a feeling and you're like, that was weird. And it's like sometimes it can be masked in a good feeling or whatever, but deep down inside, we know what it feels like. And Zach had a great like analogy of like the soul or the conscience being seared, and how when you just continuously bite the bitter apple and you're just like masking your taste buds and you're like, this is good, you know?
Yeah. I think let's come back to conscience. I'm glad that you pointed it out, because we don't that word, like, I don't know, right? Does everybody have one? Is it the same? Is it subjective? But I think there's something there that we can know, right? And we're allured to taste something or drawn to something, but that there is a conscience that seems to be we all have a story or an experience where we went, I violated that, and we'll come back to that.
Yeah, no, it's like in the Christian experience, like when we're going through temptation, is God present in that temptation, or is he not present in that temptation? And I think that it's very black and white in that, and thinking about it like that, where in life things will not present themselves like that. Like if you're talking to, say, like a guy, or if you're or whatever, and you're just like talking to someone, and it's like in that moment you're not going to think like, is God present in this or not? It's like, I don't know, it's an interesting thought though.
Yeah, we again come back to this, because in the West we've kind of desacralized the world, right? We've wiped it of everything spiritually happening, so it's just like a level playing field. So we're like, well, God's not there, and there's no other forces of spiritual reality that are present. It's like, no, God is there. He's with us, and he's not left us alone. And so that's pretty interesting. Pull on that thread. Riley, what comes to your imagination?
It's a good question. I think usually like negative thoughts. I think like something bad. Like when the first thing I think of with temptation, it's like probably something that I shouldn't do, something I should resist, is my first thought. And I'd say that that's definitely a healthy view, I feel like. And I think that's changed this year for me. Like the view of temptation a lot this year has changed compared to, like, I don't know what I would have thought of with temptation a year ago, but now I feel like I have a healthier view of temptation.
Cool. How so?
This year I was invited by a friend of mine to join an accountability group, and a lot of the questions we go through are like, there's a whole question about temptation, and there's actually a couple of different questions about temptations, and it's just like having every week we meet, it's a routine, we're dialoguing about it, and if we had a temptation that like either caused us to stumble or a temptation that we thought of, like we open air that out. And so that's helped me a lot this year compared to like the year before. It felt a lot like, occasionally I would talk about it with somebody, but like not often, and it was not very routinely. And now it's very routinely, and it's like every week if I came across a temptation, it's like I get the opportunity to voice that. and talk through it, work through it, get to the root of it a lot. And it's been really helpful this year.
Yeah, the accountability is huge, game changer. I don't think there's any other way to get through it. You ever lie to your accountability group?
So the last question, we have a list of questions that we developed. The last question is, did you lie about anything? And it's kind of like, because if you did lie,
You gotta lie again.
You have to lie again, and it's like that's like a big. And if anybody in the group finds out you lied, then it's like
double lie.
You
You
either
get
have to
kicked
pay a
out?
fine.
Oh really?
Like we have a late fine. A lot of us been showing up late recently, and we created a late fine. So like if you show up 5 minutes late, you got to pay $20.
Where's that money go?
Wow.
That's
breakfast?
a lot of money.
Oh,
I was gonna say.
Breakfast.
$20.
Yeah,
You get
crazy.
extra eggs that morning. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It'll even out.
So and if you lie, you get kicked out of the group too. Like
wow.
even though you don't admit it, like if you keep the lie and like somebody in the group finds out you were lying and it was like a serious lie, then it's like, yeah, you're like, you lost that. Like this is an opportunity for us to be together and grow, and you took advantage of that, and it's serious, you know. Like
That's awesome. We need more of that.
Yeah.
it's been really good this year. I will. It's been life changing for sure.
We need
Yep.
way more of that too. If everybody keeps getting kicked out of groups, we need way more.
The liars group.
Yeah, it'll be one group. Everybody's like, "Yes, I did lie the entire thing," but anyway, I'll admit that I lied.
Different group next week.
Yeah,
It's a serious weight to it, though. It's
It's good. It's
That's
good.
cool.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, even just listening to all the imaginative things is so helpful, because probably everybody who's watching or listening to this too, it's like, yep, immediately something comes to mind when I hear the word temptation. And we were talking about it, that if there's some helpful contribution that this conversation can make, one of the things we hope is to frame temptation back in that arc of a journey, and to think about it like if there's really a true aim to our life, temptation starts to make sense beyond just a list of do these things, don't do these things.
Yeah.
And we don't really know, well, why am I doing these and not doing these? Or this is the bad list, this is the good list. And we were talking about it, that there's very good things that can tempt you and take you or draw you from what you're aimed at. And that's a really helpful thing to know, because you can pay attention to all the bad list and then completely find yourself, shipwrecked by a good thing that took you off of what you were supposed to be aimed at.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's helpful about the wayfaring thing. Like the idea of the vision is Jesus. There is an ideal kind of calling for the human person, and this redemption story is like, no, you are to become, you not just look to him, but look like him, and to, over the long course of our life, make this journey to mature towards this greater love of God, greater love of neighbor, embodying that faith. And the things that draw us away from that or allure us away from that, that's what we have to pay attention to and have a soft conscience towards, right? Like more like Lord of the Rings. If we're going on a journey and we're all supposed to reach that and not be knocked off that trail, and then we see somebody wandering off for whatever reason, that's what we pay attention to. Say, no, come back. There's an aim to the arc of our lives. And that life of faith, once you have that aim, then all these things start to, even sin itself, right? Missing the mark and things like that. We go, well, what does that even mean? Well, you're called to become something in Christ. And so the invitation and then the empowerment is, no, look to me, look like me, come look with me, love God, love your neighbor. And the things that want to pull you out of that right relationship to God and to others, and to arrest that development or turn you in on yourself again. That's the stuff to pay attention to. It's not just a list of things. I think that's a helpful thing. And we've probably all experienced it, right? Where we know that aim, and something came along and just allured me or caught my attention and drew me off of it.
And if you don't have that thing to take, like if you're tempted and struggling with something and you can't just cut it off, you need to replace it with something else, like something bigger, more powerful, more fulfilling. Like I think we're often tempted by these things that are fulfilling in the moment, but what we actually need to go towards is like ultimate fulfillment that just completely trumps anything else.
Yeah. I think that's what you were describing with Jesus in the desert. There's a way to imagine him at that point of 40 days of hunger. And then you go, yeah, it's so hard you're physical body would want that food, but you imagine Jesus or any of us who have committed so much to the aim of what you're called to do or be, and somebody comes and tries to take you away with something much lesser, and you're just like, no thanks, right?
Mhm.
Like you couldn't, I mean, you were training for a race, right? And you had set and fixed your eyes on a mark or a prize. And if I came to you like 4 days before your race and was just like, let me sideline that, you'd be like, no, I have been pressing towards this thing, right? So I think that it gives a beautiful framework to when you think about ultimate or infinite joy versus those finite temporal things. This is Augustine's lesser loves, right? Like keep that high aim. If you don't have that vision, it's very easy to just be battling between things that are tempting us. And so keeping that aim is super, super important.
Yeah, and it almost feels like a little bit, because it's going to be difficult in those moments if your palate isn't proper to want to taste the goodness of God, but be tempted by other things. It reminds me of coffee a little bit, of like really great coffee. One of our favorite partners, Buddy Brew, the owner, he said that if you don't like our coffee, it's like your palate is wrong, because our coffee is really good. Yeah. And so I think like coffee takes you have to drink a lot of coffee over time to really be able to taste all that is there, and that it takes time. And even brewing takes time. I did this exercise with my buddy Michael Hill in Atlanta. I don't think he listens. I'm just kidding. He does. But we did this exercise where it's like you have the cup of coffee 15 minutes after it brewed, 30 minutes after it brewed, and 45 minutes after it's brewed. And they taste wildly different at all the different times, because more flavor gets pulled out of the beans, more stuff comes through. And it's so fascinating. And I think similarly, like in our faith, that we can have that initial sip and it's like, oh, this is way different than anything I've ever tasted. I'm not sure if it's really resonating, but the more that you continue to sit with it and drink it, it's like the more flavor and the more alive it comes. As long as you're not also drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper on the side, but if you're doing that, it's like your taste buds are never going to be properly aligned.
Yeah. That's so good. I mean, the right love the things he loves. Tune my heart to your heart. Like, let me love what you love and know what you know. This is a beautiful way. And I'm glad you brought it up, because it's not just remove the negative things. Like, no, train your palate for the right things. And anybody who has been drunk on cheap wine, and then you're just like, why did I do that? Like, that was dumb. It wasn't even good. Or if you give into the temptation for you're craving sweets, and then you eat something that's kind of just low, it's garbage, right? But it does satisfy the sugar fix that you were looking for. But then you look at it and you're like, why did I just eat that, right? Like if I'm gonna do the calorie thing, why that, right? And if you have a palate that's been aimed at and tasting these greater things, I think it is harder to be like, no, I'm not giving in for that. No, that's good.
Oh, that's so true.
It's like the Five Guys. Like you ordered it a second time.
Called you out.
And there's, I don't
Did you lie about that today? You're off the podcast.
You had it just before.
Yes.
I had Five Guys a couple weeks ago when the Bears were playing terribly, and I eat my feelings. So it was like halftime is going terrible, and I go, Five Guys, get over here right now. Large Cajun fry.
It's a great question. When are you most susceptible to temptation? I would love to know for you, like because we've all been in that place where we also are not mindful of our own vulnerability. When do you find yourself most susceptible to temptation?
Around 8:20 on Thursdays.
It's 8:20 on a Thursday right now.
That's funny.
I feel like when my emotions are like all over the place, I feel like that's when I feel most frazzled and can like anything that can like help me feel stable or comfortable. It's easy to run to in those moments.
What do you think
That's good.
the most tempting thing is for you? Like we're talking about like when you'll fall off, but like say you're on track. What has to walk by that you're like, whoop, and then you feel the need to get off?
Walk by. Burgers don't walk unless you're an Uber driver. Yeah, I mean, I think it can be a variety of things. I think for me, I think eating my feelings is like a very easy way where it's like looking for comfort and satisfaction in something other than God, which I don't think is good. But also, like, I think in relationships, like wanting to get that affirmation of someone like desiring you or thinking highly of you. Like, I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of wanting that. And especially how that can play out of like just spending time together, even like physically, it can get turned into things that it shouldn't. So I think those are some of the probably the main temptations I have, or even, I mean, what we were talking about earlier of like the temptation to just like fall into dreaming and like let dreaming like run wild in a way that's like unhealthy, or it's like this future Jared and this future situation is greater and better than that now. And it's like something I've been wrestling with is that like there's all of the full God's contentment in this moment right now, like it will be the rest of my life. Like that'll be a common thread through the rest of my life, that full contentment in God is available now and will always be available no matter what circumstances are going on, which is like so fascinating, because I don't believe that. Like I fully believe that it's like if I get to this job when I'm married and like all these different things and I have this amount of money, I'll be full.
Yeah.
So
I think that idea of flourishing is relational, not circumstantial. When that, I remember writing that sentence down and going, yeah, I think that's the secret of being content in all things. I think that's what Paul knew. And that when I have that contentment in God because it's relational, then I know the secret of being content. If it's not found in the relationship with God, I will always be drawn to the next thing and trying to find it in the next thing. And then it'll be elusive. It's always not there.
Yeah.
Emotions all over the place. That's when you're vulnerable. How about you?
When I am alone and stressed, or actually a lot of times when I've accomplished something too, and I'm like proud, but I didn't quite get what I didn't feel quite as full as I, maybe thought I would. So it's like you kind of want to carry on the joy. So, but usually it's when I'm alone.
Yeah.
Oh, for me,
didn't see that coming.
now we're going this
Thought we
way.
were going that way.
Didn't see that coming.
Just mix it up.
I feel like for me, it's mostly. Wait, can you repeat the question?
You asked the question.
Most vulnerable.
No, because Zach asked the
temptation?
initial question.
She didn't ask
When are
it.
you most vulnerable to temptation?
Oh, okay. I feel like I'm most vulnerable to temptation when ultimately I feel like I have this dream life, and kind of what Jared was saying, like you'll be happy until you get this, that, and the other. So when I'm most vulnerable is when I'm in the midst of just like walking my walk, thinking this is what's going to fulfill me until I get there. But then something walks by and kind of like gives a glimpse of what could be. And I'm like, oh, that's going to do it. So then I'll get off the path for a second. And I'm like, wait, this is it. And then it disappoints. And I'm like, shoot. And then I get back. And that's the worst feeling. I mean, I think when you give into the temptation and it is false, like it's like a very momentary happiness, if you will. That's very disappointing. It's very frustrating. It's like I knew I shouldn't have done that. And then it's not necessarily guilt, it's just frustration. You're like, God wasn't there and I did that. And now I have to walk back and then walk on. And it's just it's a hard walk. So I think that's when I'm most vulnerable, when there's a false prophet, if you will, that walks right in front of me. So
What's the solve to that temptation of always wanting what's next and never appreciating where you are?
Anybody?
Yeah, I feel like I definitely have not solved that, but something that I've done is like when journaling, like trying to write down specifically how I can see like God working, or specific things I'm thankful for in this season of like, man, like today is good because I can see God has provided this way, and I have this, and this. That is a very like beautiful thing, like friends, community, a job, like all those different things that I think can very easily be taken for granted that we have. And being like, I'm thankful for that today, like has helped some. Now I don't do that every day, but like in the days that I do, it feels different because it's like you're operating out of this, man, I'm grateful for what I have kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Gratitude.
helped me that exact thing's helped me a lot. Like in my lowest moments, like if I'm feeling like very alone and I'm going through it and it's been multiple days or weeks, it's like getting outside, like me just going for a walk on Bayshore. Like I think like I live pretty close to Bayshore, which is nice, and so I can like walk there in like 10-15 minutes, and I'll just go for a walk, and eventually I'll just stop and journal just like my thoughts, what's going on, and it just like helps. It's like a way of communicating like how you're feeling with God, but it feels different when you're like writing it out. Almost it lets you like go through it, I feel like, and process it a little bit, and it's just that's helped me before at some low points.
I think it's helpful too, the idea to keep in mind the big story, because it's very easy to forget that we're nested within this long, slow, deep, meaningful story. And if you watch any movie or you read any great novel, there's for sure these pages where you don't necessarily see it all coming together, but you know that character has to pass through this in order to get to that. And somehow we forget that that's our story too. And so the Tampa chapter, you can be like, well, can I just fast forward and skip the Tampa chapter, or skip this chapter, or this relationship chapter, or the job, right? Like, this is not my ideal job. And I think it's helpful to remember, like, you're on the journey. That's the whole wayfaring thing. Like, if we can remember that and go, okay, no, this is chapter 2 of a very long story. And I don't know what's up ahead in chapter 3, but I won't get to chapter 3 without page by page by page. And that can enchant, right, Lewis, back to the dancing and tingling, a festival, not a cold machine. The reality that we're nested in is the story. And we can forget that and be lulled to sleep and dreaming that the story's over there. It's like, no, you're in the story right now. These are the moments, right? These are the struggles that actually make that character become that character in chapter 8 that you're just like, whoa, right? Like, how did that happen? Well, they passed through this long, boring chapter in Tampa, and it was struggle here, struggle here, struggle here. So don't forget that. I think that's powerful on a Thursday night at 8:20 when you're like, yes, right? That I'm still in the story. There's not some other story. I think that's the very dangerous thing about the abstraction of digital curated experiences out here, rather than like the remarkable ordinary, to go back to Buechner. I think that's helpful. Remember, you're in the story. There's not some other story. You're in the story.
Long, slow, deep.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good. Yeah.
I was going to ask, while you're walking the day to day, though, like, how do you know when to give into the quote unquote temptation? Because it's like, you are the main character in your own story, and you are going to, like, God gives us free will. So it's like, how do you know when to make the turn? Like, how do you know if this is where you're meant to turn, or if it's going to make you go into a ditch, or, you know what I mean? Like, how do you know when to give in to that temptation? How do you know if it's good or not? It's scary.
You want to have a good testimony, so you got to mix it up sometimes. You know,
like a crazy turn in the
get into some things. Go through some hardships.
It's not going to be a straight line.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a great the relational reality. We've got to come back to that of like God with us, right? Like, what's the long arc of my story? I'm aiming literally at God himself, and it's relational. So God, you are God, I am not. And so immediately right there is the reframe of, I'm not designing my life, which is completely, that's a bizarre turn to the modern era that says, like, it's up to me to figure the whole thing out. To turn it around and say, God, what would you have for me? Like this old prayer that was written by a monk that said, exalt me or bring me low according to your will. We don't pray like that, right? We don't nest ourselves within a story that says, God, you made me, you designed me, you know the future, you know the plans you have, right? Call me into those things and keep me aimed rightly at loving you and loving my neighbor, and trusting that you are going to be there in your providence, drawing me forward. And so I'm going to trust that Tampa is the story, right? And then, God, keep me alert. Show me the doors that you're opening. Keep me sensitive. Give me a soft conscience. Keep me near your word. Like, these are the old ways that we kept a soft conscience, and we had good discernment, and we knew what was resonant with who God is and what he's calling us to. And then traveling not alone, right? Like having good people on the journey that go, wait, something, you declared an intent when you graduated from undergrad, that you thought that you maybe were aiming at something. Who knows if that's the thing, right? But you've got friends around you who are saying, hey, we're going to be faithful and pray for you and encourage you in that journey. And if you start to turn in this direction, we're at least going to be like, hey, what's calling you this way? What's causing you to go that way? So don't go it alone, right? Stay prayerful, stay aimed at the big story. I think there's no easy roadmap, right? But the things that would draw you or allure you, that would take you away from becoming who God's made you to be and pull you out of that love for God, love for neighbor, pay attention to those things, right? And the things that turn you in on yourself, maybe the $80 sweatshirt, once is a beautiful gift, right? But if it keeps showing up and it keeps showing up and it keeps showing up now, right? Like, where's that taken me?
Yeah.
So soft conscience. I think that might be a good way to step into that one of keep a soft conscience, keep a soft conscience. That idea of seared conscience is like, I know that this thing was a mistake and it does take me off that path that I'm called to. And I did it once. And then if I do it again and I do it again, it gets easier. I wonder if any of you have stories of that or can go back and go, yeah, I've felt that. That does happen, that there's a searing of a conscience where at first something provoked that sense of like, that was not the right call or the right step. But you kept going in that direction and you lost that capacity to feel that. I don't know.
I remember when I was a kid, I was a bit of a rotten kid. And at this point, I was probably maybe 8 or 9. And I took $20 out of my mom's wallet. And I remember just the feeling in my gut was like I could throw up. And but I didn't want to tell her that I took it. And I also wanted the $20. So I remember distinctly like just saying like this, like trying to suppress that feeling. And as time went on, I got better at doing it. And it's scary how long and how over time, how good I got at it. And it was to the point where like it's like it's not there. And then I remember turning back to God. And when that came back, I was so grateful it was back. I was like, okay, it wasn't permanent. There's hope where it'll come back.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to, like, a story of how the conscience becomes seared, but that it can come back. And
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been interesting when I think about like this dynamic of how shame can so often come into that, and I feel like that's where it's like I've definitely had the moments similar to that where it's like I just start like not feeling. I feel like I go back and forth where it's like my conscience just allows me to continually like fall into something, but then like I'll also very specifically feel like this deep shame that almost pushes me back into it even more. So it's like a very kind of weird dynamic where it's like you get numb to like the resistance of falling into something, but then feel deep shame about it too.
I think that's, the reason I think it's so good, doubt, fear, temptation, because we're not going to eliminate it. You're not going to eliminate it. 50 years from now, somebody is going to still be susceptible to temptation and to the idea that even late in life, if you continually move in a direction, you're going to sear your conscience, right? It's so be careful of that. Know that that's God-given. And that little feeling you have, that sickness that you felt when you felt that, pay attention to that. That's a gift. And don't ignore that because it can become seared. And then I love that you brought up shame, because this is the trap, right? Is that we're tempted to step off this path. And as soon as we do, we go, there it is, right? And what normally happens? We go, well, I feel that shame. And so then what's right there, right in that shame? Well, you've already made that mistake.
So might as well just keep going.
Double down.
Let's go.
I'm going to double down. And then I double down and my conscience becomes more seared. And then the shame says, well, you're already this far. And so you double down again. And now that shame and searing of the conscience thing, pulling back. So here's my question. If you're caught in that, what's the way out of that? Because I think all of us have been there, where it's like that shame is happening, and then it was easier the second time, and shame comes and it's easier the third time. And we've all felt caught in that. How have you found your way out of that? Like, what's been a way out when you've found yourself in that?
I feel like
Community. Well, sorry.
no, go ahead.
It's okay. You were already on something.
Community. I was gonna say for sure, like opening up to people, because I think it is like you're kind of drowning in like a pool, and you just need someone to give you a hand. And I think, make sure it's the right person, because like I think you can definitely go to the wrong person that like pushes you further, like makes you feel shame in like what you've done or like what you've fallen into. But someone who actually like loves you and wants the best for you is gonna not make you feel more judged, but understand that life is going to happen, and that you're gonna fall off track every once in a while, and that ability to like hug you and tell you they love you and that God loves you, I think is just like the most freeing thing in the world, where it's like you understand that I'm not too far gone, I'm not this like terrible piece of person, I am. It is okay, you are forgiven for that, for what that is. And I think that is such a freeing feeling that I think the shame cycle of temptation can really keep you away from.
Yeah.
What's the Mumford lyric where he says it's the grace at every start?
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful, that song, we should put that in there. Like there's this, it's the grace I feel with every start, right? That's the friend you need. That's like, it's not that sense of shame and failure that I feel where my friend is like, pushes back from me, but that friend that leans in and you feel the grace at every start. What a gift that is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, like, or maybe not even for me, but one of the ways is just like when it catches up to you and it like kicks you in the butt, and you're just like you've been like, you got used to it, like you're saying, that sear just keeps you, just the more you lean in and accept whatever the temptation is, and eventually, like if it's lying, like you keep stealing money from your mom, eventually like when she figures it out and you get in trouble, you get grounded, and like I can just like picture like 10-year-old like getting in trouble, just crying, and it's like that kicks you in the butt, and it's like there's a pretty high chance you're not going to do it like next week at least. Like, I mean, maybe ever, hopefully ever, but it's like when, like, I can think of times when it's like it catches up to you and you get kicked down, and it's kicks you down real hard, and it's like, but it helps you like realize, it's like, yeah, I don't want to ever feel how I feel right now ever again. And it's like, I'm going to make sure I don't like fall into that temptation ever again, because that was one of the worst feelings ever in my life. Yeah. And so it's, I mean, it can be a bad, like, like it could be a bad thing that happens, but it actually is a good thing in the long run, because it's helping you get away from that temptation.
Yeah. And I think it can be dangerous too, because it's something I've fallen in that cycle of like, then like the idol becomes about running away from something bad rather than like going towards something good. And I think, the temptation to just want to avoid bad things in the Christian walk is so prevalent and easy to fall into when, that's not the walk that we are called to. I mean, C.S. Lewis talked about we need stronger spells, and that's kind of weird language for the Christian walk. But like the notion that, the pursuit of God and the goodness of God that you can experience is the biggest motivator and more contentment, everything that you want, versus avoiding bad things will lead you to contentment, because it doesn't. You will sit there and be paranoid the rest of your life, just trying not to do bad things.
Yeah, well, if you just avoid it and you don't actually like replace it with a rightly ordered thing like God, then like you're eventually just gonna find something else. Like it's just like fulfillment. Like if you don't, like you'll get temporary fulfillment from something, but then you'll avoid it and you'll try finding another thing. And it's like, I feel like that's the same thing with avoiding temptations and running from it. And it's like, you have to you have to run to God. You can't just keep avoiding and try, and then you find another avenue and it's a repeat, but it's a different thing, so it feels different, and it's
if it's not Five Guys, it's Raising Cane's, you know.
I'm so glad you just cut right to the chase with that too, because I think everything else is fruitless, right? And that's why Lewis wrote, like, we're half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us. And if we're not having that conversation, and it can be like, oh, well, desire God more, and then all your temptations, that's actually the solve, right? That's Lewis, one of the greatest minds of this era. He said, if I find within myself desires that nothing in this world can satisfy, the only possible explanation is that I was made for another. And this is nested within this whole conversation of saying, you have to have a deeper longing. That's the Sehnsucht symphony that we just made, is you're meant for that. And if we're not talking about that, then you're going to end up eating Raising Cane's and Five Guys, right? It's going to happen to us because we're going to get tired, emotionally stirred up, whatever it is, and we're going to fall back into that lesser thing. And if we don't have a better conversation about infinite joy and say, no, it's actually what we're made for, and I need to recover a palate for that, right? Like, I've stopped longing for that. I don't even long for that anymore. I'm fooling about. Lewis calls it out and he says it's like we're kids in the slums playing with mud pies because we have no imagination for a holiday by the sea. And I think in our material world, and he said the stronger spells, it's all been laid upon us for almost 100 years, all of our education, philosophy, everything, to convince us that the good of man can be found in this world. And I think that this is a moment where we get to say, like, no, the reason that these temptations to lesser things keep coming and having such a strong pull is we're not talking about what Jared just said, pointing at the infinite joy. So we have to start there. Has to be the aim. And then we have to say, keep a soft conscience. Don't let it get seared. Keep aiming at that higher thing. And if you fall, it's the grace at every start. Don't go it alone, right? Aim at that, right? And I think too, you can recognize that temptation itself is going to be there. That's not the sin. And so pay attention to the temptations along the way, and if you're feeling tempted, be honest about that, right? Like, there can be that preventative step to say it early and be like, hey, we're all aiming at this infinite joy, and to have an open and honest conversation. Say, I don't know why, but I'm starting to lose that.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't long for that anymore. I'm starting to feel a bit more like a half-hearted creature. Then one of my friends can come along and say, you were made for more than that. Come on.
Yeah. Wow. That takes a lot of vulnerability to say that, you know, especially like we're talking about pride and stuff. It takes a lot to be able to like step back and be like, this is really how I'm feeling, and not, and it's like, there's a lot of fear in that because people might think of you a little differently. So no, that's phenomenal. Very grateful for you guys, you know, because it's hard to walk the walk with people who don't necessarily see things in the same way as you. And I mean, after this podcast, we'll all disperse into our respective nights, and people listening will go off into their respective lives. And it's like, you never know who, after hearing that wisdom, like you'll touch and like might need to be vulnerable in that moment. Yeah. I think it's beautiful. Okay.
And that's what happened the other night at the Wayfarer event in Tampa. And there's another one on December 6th, right?
Yep.
So that's part of what we're doing together is like, hey, we're all Wayfarers. And so we are going to go to our respective places tonight, but we're not alone, and we don't go it alone. There's others who are on that same journey, and that regular community is so, so good. And even in our mind, to remember that, no, there's thousands more that are aiming in that direction. So don't let yourself believe you're not alone. So
let's say I'm feeling the temptation of something, and I get that I can't just say no to that. Like, I need to say yes to God. And how can I do that? Like tonight, how can I go home and start saying yes to God versus yes to the temptation?
I mean, I feel like it's a heart submission almost. Like one, your heart has to have that desire. If your mind's just like focused on resisting it, and there's no heart and no heart towards like, I'm resisting this because I love God and because this is what God has for me, not that thing. That's like really the only way. I feel like it has to come from your heart and you're rightly desired.
And once you're there, though, like, what do you do? Maybe instead of smoking weed, now I have my whole evening. What should I do instead?
Read your Bible.
Read the Bible. Pray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like it's
go.
less of these, big one-time moments where you have to like make it like, oh, I'm now in temptation, but like a daily choice to consistently choose like a posture towards God, which can look like a whole lot of different things. So I don't think, instead of smoking weed, it's also, I think, good to go like shoot basketball instead.
Yeah.
To go do something else. I don't think it has to be, this over spiritualization of, to resist temptation doesn't have to, I think what filling it needs to be God, but distracting yourself from temptation, I don't think is always necessarily a bad thing, or calling a friend, not necessarily having to talk about the temptation, but just connecting with them and doing something else.
Yeah. Like there's been times like I've been alone and like I'll like be down on myself and it's like I've called Jared and I've been like, Jared, I'm spiraling. Like, what do I do? Get me out of here. I'm sick of being alone. And it'll be like, what are you doing? Go do something. Go hang out with somebody. Don't like if you're feeling sad, don't sit at home alone on the couch. Like, and it's like, that's a temptation. It's like to sit there and feel sad the whole time and just go down a spiral. And it's like, no, like get out of the house. It's not that hard. Do it.
Yeah.
Those voicemails are crazy. I don't pick up your calls.
He sees it, reads it out.
Riley's
I've never do a
spiraling.
voicemail.
I think
Just so
it's a great question though, and I love the suggestion of just like don't over spiritualize it. Like get with other people. Don't be alone. I think too, in that moment when you have that recognition, that like enjoy that. Right? That struggle that you're feeling is an aliveness. And so I think just if you're feeling that, like for a second, just recognize that that's a gift. Your conscience hasn't been seared, right?
Yeah.
You're a creature made for something more. So mark that in your story and say, I was made for it. And I've literally prayed, God, give me a stronger longing for you. Like it's weak right now. I don't have it, but I want it. And so give that, provoke in me, stir me up. I had a friend who said, stir up, right? And St. Augustine said, the house of my soul is too small. It needs to be widened and enlarged, right? So pray some prayers like that and be like, I don't feel it. I don't long for you, God, but I want to. And that's my prayer, is like, it's kind of the help me in my unbelief, help me in my not longing right now, because I'm done with the lesser things, but I'm confessing that they're right there, right? And then get with people and like, and don't be alone in that moment. I think that's great. I will also say it's okay to take some strong stands, and there are some things, right, that if it's right there, and just like we talk about the joy, it's not in the thing, it comes through it. But the temptation can come through some stuff as well. And so if you are surrounded with something that is the thing right now that's tempting you, it's okay to say, I'm not going to try to win this in a battle of the wits right now, right? Like I can take agency and be like, Five Guys is going out the window. Like I'm not going to set that on my table and keep looking at it. And I don't have to battle like that, right? I can take agency and be like, I'm going to pray for a different longing. And I'm going to take that thing that's right in front of me, alluring me out of what I know to be the path, and I'm going to set that thing aside, right? So I think there's some of that too, we can have an honest conversation, say, do that stuff, right? James K. Smith, we were just talking about it earlier, great, brilliant guy, who talks about his way out of depression. And he said, I found that I couldn't think my way out of it. I had to act my way out of it. Right? And sometimes we can think our way. We can be like, well, I'm going to think my way out of this temptation. It's like, put don't have the weed right in front of you. Right? Like you might have to act your way a little bit in front of that, right? Because it's harder. So I think that can be good. Yeah. Soft conscience. We wrote some stuff down, like be honest with yourself. I think that falls in that category too. Like it's okay to be honest and say, my fear or my temptation right now is giving up. So pay attention to that. Like if that's what's the thing in front of me, then share that with somebody else. Be honest with that and say, hey, I keep having this persistent voice to give up. Just know that. So if you see me giving up, know that that's not me just taking a break. That's me succumbing to something. And so I want you to know that. So be honest about it. Be alert. pay attention. We don't talk about it enough, but you read the Screw Tape Letters and you'll see the story is a visible and an invisible story. So it's not that the devil is in your Twinkie or whatever it is that you're drawn to, Five Guys, right? But the spiritual world is a very real thing, and the devil is a very real, there's a spiritual opposition to the Christian life. And if we don't talk about that, then we're also leaving something out of the conversation, that that demonic realm doesn't know your thought, right? It's watching behavior. It's what we're susceptible to. And so just pay attention, be alert that there is a spiritual battle to this. And so don't neglect to pray. Deliver me from this. Guard my heart and mind, right? Those are the deep and real prayers. And Jonathan, you said it, pray out loud, right? Like, hey, God, I need a way of escape out of this temptation, and I need it right now, because I really do feel like smoking weed and medicating that longing that is not for you. And I need a way out of that. Like, have an honest conversation with God. Pray out loud, like, pray. So
That's good.
Any other thoughts, like things that we can leave people with to just be like an encouragement as they feel the temptation coming, to be able to be strong in that moment and move through it?
I think just knowing you're not alone. I think that's the biggest part. I think when you're walking through something, it can be really frustrating and sad when you're like, I'm the only one dealing with this and I have no one to talk to. And there's always someone to turn to, no matter like if it's someone like a close friend or just a random person at a coffee shop. Like God is hidden in many, many places. So just knowing you're not alone and following everything everyone just said today, because it can be a hard walk, and that's for sure. But I loved what you said, like, show yourself. Like, I feel lost and I don't like it. Like, please bring me back. Yep. Like, that's phenomenal. I think that one was the kicker for me.
Yeah. And maybe be a good listener too. Like, all of us, we're encouraging people to be vulnerable and reach out and like, do it. How great is it when a real friend or somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, can I ask you something really quick? I'm struggling with something. I don't think I know anybody who's like, right? Like, that's great when somebody is that vulnerable and says like, hey, I need you to pray for me. I need your help. We will rise to the occasion. And so do that, take that step, but also be ready to be that person. So like, as Jared said, your first reaction isn't like disgust and like, ooh, right? But it's a gracious like embrace of people who are struggling, that are vulnerable enough to be like, hey, I need some help right now. Yeah. Let's be the people to be like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm guilty a lot of times of like, if somebody does like come to me to talk, I'll be like, all right, how can I fix this for them? Like, it's like, I want their best. And it's like, all right, let me give them all the ways I think they could fix it. And it's like, I hate when someone does that to me, like right off it's like, I just want you to like hear what I'm saying and like be there for me. And then like when the time's right, like give some input. But like at the end of the day, it's like, it's about that connection there, I feel like. And there will be a truth that comes inside of it naturally. But like that good listener part, like I need to be a better listener sometimes compared to like trying to jump and fix everything right away. It's like, there's a time and place for it for sure. It's a balance. It's great.
Yeah. Temptation. We did it.
We did it.
Man.
Yeah.
More
ain't done.
Was that?
Temptation, it ain't done though.
Ain't done. Long, slow, deep.
Checkpoint reached. We done with temptation.
Are we going to talk about it live? Is this the next conversation?
Yeah,
December 6th. December 6th. Next Wayfarer event, Kennedy, Buddy Brew location.
Yeah. Good.
Buddy Brew on Kennedy.
Love it. Love it.
Kennedy on Buddy Brew.
Yeah.
We've renamed it. That's how big Buddy Brew's gotten.
Yeah.
We're renamed.
Come home. They made it. Yeah. So please come hang out there. It'll be so much fun to get to kind of dive into this a little bit more and hear everybody's stories. Follow us on social media for all the updates. And never alone.
Walk on.
There you go. Happy birthday.